You brought a pencil to command a billion-dollar battlefield. Colonel Nathan Cole's voice carried across the operations floor, polished with the kind of confidence that expected laughter before the joke had even landed. He stood beneath a wall of glowing satellite feeds, holding Daniel Mercer's folded map between two fingers as though it were something pulled from a museum drawer. Around him, young officers watched from rows of consoles washed in cold blue light. Green tracking icons moved across the desert. Drone cameras swept over ridgelines. A Black Hawk Mark Dustoff II followed a narrow route through the mountains 30 miles west of Fort Calder. Every system reported normal. Every screen said the sky belonged to them. Mercer stood alone near the end of the central table. 76 years had narrowed his shoulders, but had not softened his gaze. His faded field jacket looked almost colorless beneath the fluorescent lights. He said nothing. His pale eyes remained fixed on the map in Cole's hand, especially the red pencil line that crossed a place called Widow's Pass. Cole unfolded the paper and displayed it to the room. Hand-drawn contours covered the surface. Small circles marked relay stations, dry creek beds, an abandoned water tower, and 3 sections of mountain terrain no digital overlay considered important. One corner of the map was darkened by an old burn. We have 3 layers of satellite redundancy, Cole continued. Live drone coverage, automated terrain correction, encrypted navigation, and a technical staff trained on systems you probably never imagined when you were in uniform. A few restrained chuckles moved through the room. Mercer looked toward the western windows. Beyond the reinforced glass, afternoon sunlight flashed against the pale ridges. Dust moved along the ground in thin silver ribbons. High above the desert, a narrow band of clouds stretched north to south like a faded scar. At 14:20, Mercer said quietly, "You'll lose the northern relay." The laughter stopped for only a moment. Cole glanced at the digital clock above the main display. 2:19 and 50 seconds p.m. He smiled and raised the map slightly higher. "And your pencil told you." "That." Mercer did not answer. The second hand advanced. 55, 56, 57. A communications lieutenant leaned toward his console as a warning icon flickered once, then vanished. 58, 59. At exactly 2:20, the northern satellite feed froze. The image broke into gray blocks and went black. Someone whispered that it was probably a synchronization fault. Then Drone 7 lost its picture over Black Ridge. A bright green route line disappeared from the tactical display. Cole's smile faded. The room filled with the soft tapping of keyboards, followed by faster tapping, then the sharp voices of technicians calling out failed links. One screen darkened, then another, then 6 at once. The great wall of perfect information collapsed into black glass, leaving only the red emergency lights pulsing across stunned faces. Static burst from the overhead speaker. Beneath it came the strained but controlled voice of Dustoff II's pilot. "Calder Command, we've lost GPS repeat. All navigation feeds are down." Cole slowly lowered the handwritten map. 10 seconds earlier, the room had laughed at Daniel Mercer. Now every person in it was waiting for the old man to speak. 20 minutes earlier, Daniel Mercer had entered the Fort Calder Operations Center without ceremony, carrying nothing but a weathered field jacket, a folded sheet of paper, and a yellow pencil worn almost to the metal. No escort announced him. No officer stepped forward to greet him. A civilian badge clipped to his pocket identified him only as a guest, which was exactly how Colonel Nathan Cole chose to see him. Mercer paused just inside the reinforced doors while the command floor moved around him with disciplined speed. Satellite images covered the main wall. Drone routes crossed digital maps in bright green lines. Weather data scrolled beside live positions from armored vehicles moving across the desert. 30 miles west, Dustoff II followed a planned corridor toward the mountains. Every machine spoke with confidence. Mercer listened to what they were not saying. A faint burst of static passed through a radio channel and disappeared. One navigation marker shifted several yards east before correcting itself. Outside the western windows, dust moved against the reported wind direction. High clouds had begun gathering above Black Ridge, though the forecast display showed clear conditions for another 4 hours. Mercer walked to an unused corner of the central table and unfolded his paper. Captain Emily Brooks noticed him first. She was 31, an intelligence officer with a habit of studying details other people dismissed. She watched Mercer draw 3 curved lines, mark an abandoned water tower, and circle the northern relay station. His hand moved slowly, but never hesitated. "Sir, may I ask what you are charting?" she said. Mercer glanced toward the mountains, where the signals stop agreeing with the ground. Emily looked at the digital terrain display, then back at the paper. "The network has overlapping coverage." "It has overlapping screens," Mercer replied. "That is not the same thing." Before Emily could answer, Colonel Cole approached. He was tall, sharply composed, and visibly irritated by anything he had not scheduled. "Mr. Mercer, General Hale invited you to observe the exercise." The word observe was included for a reason. Mercer placed another pencil mark near Widow's Pass. "Your northern relay is already drifting." Cole looked toward the communications section. Every status icon remained green. "My technicians report full stability." "They are reading the system," Mercer said. "I am reading the terrain." The colonel's expression tightened. Several junior officers turned in their chairs. Mercer pointed toward the western glass. "The wind below the ridge changed 12 minutes ago. Your cloud band is moving north, but the dust is moving east. Something is bending the pattern between Black Ridge and the relay station. When the aircraft enters that corridor, the network will try to correct with bad information." Cole folded his arms. "You determined all of that by looking out a window?" "The window is still connected to the world." A few officers lowered their eyes to hide their amusement. Cole did not. He reached down, lifted Mercer's map from the table, and studied the handwritten contours with a thin smile. Emily saw the old burn along one corner and the faded red line leading through Widow's Pass. She also saw Mercer's eyes follow the colonel's fingers with a stillness that felt heavier than anger. Cole turned toward the room, ready to make the old paper part of his lesson in modern command. Mercer looked at the clock. It was 2:19 in the afternoon. At 2:19 in the afternoon, Colonel Nathan Cole held Daniel Mercer's map beneath the white lights and examined it with the patient expression of a man pretending to study something he had already decided was worthless. "Let me understand this," he said. "You believe our entire navigation network is vulnerable because the dust outside is moving in the wrong direction." Mercer watched the digital clock above the main display. 42 seconds remained before 2:20. "The dust is only one sign." Cole turned the map toward the officers seated behind him. "And these circles?" "Signal shadows." "According to what sensor?" "The mountains." A quiet laugh escaped from one of the communications specialists. Cole allowed it to spread. He pointed to 3 bright status panels on the command wall. "Primary satellite link. Secondary satellite link. Emergency relay. 3 independent protections." Mercer finally looked away from the clock. 3 displays receiving corrections from the same reference. The amusement weakened. Captain Emily Brooks turned toward her console and opened the network architecture diagram. She traced the data paths with her eyes. The primary and secondary channels used different satellites, but both relied on the northern ground relay for timing verification. The emergency system pulled its location corrections from the same regional grid. They were separate roads leading across one bridge. "Colonel," Emily said carefully, "there is a shared dependency in the timing layer." Cole glanced at her. "A standard dependency with automated failover." Mercer nodded toward the map. "Failover works when the system knows it is wrong." 30 seconds remained. Cole set the paper on the table and flattened it with his palm. "Mr. Mercer, this installation has passed every federal readiness inspection for 6 consecutive years. The people in this room have trained for cyber attacks, solar interference, equipment failure, and hostile signal disruption. You walked in 20 minutes ago, looked through a window, and announced that the sky was about to disappear. I said your picture of it would disappear." The distinction settled over the room with unexpected weight. Outside, the sunlight remained hard and clear, but a narrow veil of dust had begun climbing the western slope. Mercer could see it. Emily could see it now as well. On her screen, the location marker for Drone 7 shifted 11 yards south, corrected itself, then shifted again. No warning appeared because the computer believed each correction was valid. "Drone 7 is drifting," she said. A technician shook his head. "The aircraft is holding its programmed route." "The route is moving beneath it," Mercer replied. Cole stared at the old man. "That does not make sense." "It will in 18 seconds. The room grew still. Mercer reached for his map, but Cole kept one hand pressed against it. His finger rested beside the burned corner. "And this antique is supposed to save the exercise?" he asked. Mercer's eyes lowered to the blackened paper. For the first time, something changed in his face. It was not embarrassment. It was recognition, distant and heavy, as though the colonel's hand had touched a door sealed for decades. "It saved more than an exercise," Mercer said. Cole did not hear the warning in his voice. He lifted the map again and faced the room. "You brought a pencil to command a billion-dollar battlefield." The clock reached 2:20. Somewhere inside the communications wall, a warning tone sounded once. The warning tone faded beneath another sound that only Daniel Mercer could hear. It was the dry crackle of paper catching at the edge, followed by wind pressing through a mountain pass in the dark. The command center dissolved around him. The white lights became a pale moon behind thin clouds. The polished floor became cold stone under worn boots. He was 32 years old again, standing over the same map, while a field radio produced nothing but static. The valley around him was nearly black. A rescue helicopter waited. Beyond Widow's Pass with 37 people, depending on a route that no longer existed on any official chart. A sudden storm had buried the marked trail beneath runoff and loose earth. The navigation beacon had failed. The radio repeater on the ridge had gone silent. Every instrument available to the team pointed toward a canyon that ended beneath a wall of rock. Beside Mercer stood Chief Warrant Officer Thomas Reed, his closest friend and the only man in the unit who trusted the land more than the equipment. Reed held a small red-filtered flashlight over the map, while Mercer studied the bends of a dry creek, the angle of the ridgeline, and the narrow space between two contour lines. "The chart says we stay south," Reed said. Mercer listened to the wind. It entered the valley from the west, struck the cliff face, and returned colder from a hidden opening to the north. "The chart was made before the wash changed course," Mercer answered. "There is another way through." A sharp gust lifted the map from the hood of their vehicle. Reed caught it against a portable heater, and one corner darkened before he pulled it free. The flame was small, but the burn remained, curling the paper beside the path Mercer had drawn in pencil. Reed pressed the damaged map back into his hands. "Do not find the place the map tells us to go," he said. "Find the place the ground still allows." Mercer marked a red line through the unlisted passage. It was less than 8 feet wide in places and nearly invisible beneath the moonlight. He led the convoy without satellite guidance, following the cooler air that flowed from the gap, the direction of watermarks on the stone, and the faint echo of rotor noise carried between the cliffs. Every mile required another decision. A leaning utility pole became a western reference. A dry cottonwood marked the turn toward higher ground. A water tank, abandoned years earlier, reflected one thin stripe of moonlight and confirmed they were still moving east. Reed remained at the final relay point to keep the radio signal open while Mercer guided the vehicles through the pass. His last clear words came through the speaker just before the storm swallowed. The transmission. "Keep them moving, Pathfinder 1. Mercer did. The convoy reached the waiting helicopter before sunrise. 37 people came home because a burned piece of paper had shown what the machines could not. Thomas Reed did not return with them. For decades, Mercer had kept the map folded along the same lines, preserving the red route and the blackened corner exactly as Reed had left them. The memory released him slowly. Fort Calder returned in fragments, the red warning light, the frozen satellite display, the officers staring at the dead screen. Colonel Cole still held the map, his thumb resting against the burn. Mercer looked at him with quiet steadiness. "Take your hand off that corner," he said. This time, no one in the room laughed. Colonel Cole removed his hand from the burned corner, but he did not release the map. Pride still held him more firmly than caution. Across the operations floor, the single warning tone became 3. A communications specialist leaned toward his console, then raised his voice. "Northern Relay has stopped responding." Cole turned sharply. "Switch to secondary. Secondary is searching for timing confirmation." Then force the emergency channel. The specialist entered the command. For one hopeful second, the status panel flashed green. Then it turned amber. Daniel Mercer watched the clock rather than the screens. "Drone 7 is next," he said. Cole looked at him. "On what basis?" Mercer pointed toward Black Ridge, visible through the western glass. Dust had begun climbing the lower slope in a thin moving wall. "It is entering the shadow." A lieutenant checked the drone position. 7 is 12 miles from the ridge. The computer believes it is, Mercer replied. Captain Emily Brooks opened the raw navigation data and compared it with the aircraft telemetry. The numbers shifted by only a few yards at a time, too little to trigger an alarm, but the corrections were all moving in the same direction. The system was not losing the drone. It was quietly moving the map beneath it. Colonel, Emily said, the coordinates are drifting east. Cole stepped behind her chair. How far? 17 yards. Now, 23. That is within tolerance. Mercer's eyes remained on the mountain. Not when the correction keeps growing. The image from Drone 7 trembled. The desert floor rolled sideways across the screen, then froze on a blurred ridge. A burst of static filled the room. The feed vanished. No one laughed. Cole ordered the technical team to isolate the relay failure, but the commands began arriving faster than the operators could answer. The Western weather station stopped updating. A convoy marker labeled Bravo shifted off the marked road and appeared inside a dry lake bed. 2 radio channels merged into a wash of broken voices. Green symbols blinked amber, then red. Emily placed Mercer's paper map beside her display. The 3 circles he had drawn matched the failure zones with unsettling precision. One covered the northern relay. One covered Black Ridge. The third surrounded the route used by Dustoff 2. How did you know these exact areas? She asked. Because the ground has not moved, Mercer said. Only your picture of it has. Cole finally lowered the map to the table. This could still be a software fault. Mercer looked toward the main wall. Then your software is about to lose the helicopter. As if the words had opened a door, every satellite image on the wall shuddered at once. The live map fractured into blocks of gray. Drone feeds collapsed. Position markers disappeared. The great blue glow of the command center died, leaving only red emergency lights and the reflection of stunned faces in black glass. Static cracked through the overhead speaker. Then came the voice of Dustoff 2's pilot, controlled but strained. Calder Command, we have lost global positioning system guidance. All navigation feeds are down. We are approaching the mountain corridor and visibility is dropping. Cole stared at the dead wall. Emily stared at the handwritten map. Mercer reached for his yellow pencil. Ask him what he can still see, he said. Captain Emily Brooks reached for the radio console. Dustoff 2, Calder Command. Report visual references. Do not use digital instruments. Tell us what you can see with your own eyes. Static rolled through the speaker. Like dry gravel. Then the pilot answered. Visibility is less than 2 miles. We have a dark ridge on the left, rising terrain ahead, and what appears to be a dry river channel below us. Fuel gives us approximately 26 minutes before we must commit to landing. Colonel Cole stepped closer to the microphone. Dustoff 2 climbed to regain satellite contact. Mercer's hand stopped above the map. Do not tell him to climb. Cole turned. Higher altitude gives him a clearer line to the relay. Higher altitude puts him into the dust layer. The pilot's voice returned before Cole could answer. Calder Command, winds are increasing above us. Aircraft is taking moderate turbulence. Mercer studied the handwritten contours. He marked the reported ridge, then measured the distance to the dry channel using the width of 2 fingers. Ask which direction the riverbed bends. Emily relayed the question. The reply came through broken static. It bends northeast, then disappears beneath the dust. Mercer drew a short line. He is not where the system last placed him. He is 6 miles south of that position, entering the lower approach to Widow's Pass. Cole looked at the paper. You cannot determine 6 miles from 3 visual references. The water channel only turns northeast once. Mercer tapped the map. Everywhere else it runs north. Across the room, another operator called out. Bravo convoy has lost navigation. Their lead vehicle reports the road has ended. Cole moved toward the ground operations station. Tell them to reverse course. They cannot, the operator replied. The trail is too narrow for a full turn, and the following vehicles are stacked behind them. Mercer closed his eyes for half a second, picturing the terrain. Ask whether they see a rusted water tank on high ground. The operator transmitted the question. A reply came almost immediately. Affirmative. Water tank approximately 1 mile east. Mercer circled the landmark. They are at Copper Basin, not the southern training route. If they continue forward, they will enter a dry lake bed. The surface looks firm from above, but it will not support the convoy. Cole stared at him. How do you know? The condition of a lake bed from a map that old. Because the winter runoff still reaches it, and the soil beneath the crust does not care what year it is. The emergency lights pulsed over the command floor. Without the blue wall of screens, the room seemed smaller, stripped of its certainty. Technicians continued entering recovery commands, but every attempt returned the same message: source unavailable. Emily compared Mercer's circles with the last recorded positions. The pattern was no longer coincidence. Colonel, the helicopter and Bravo convoy are moving towards separate hazards. We need a common picture now. Cole looked from the dead displays to the map. His jaw tightened. Mr. Mercer is not part of the command structure. Mercer placed the pencil beside Widow's Pass. The mountain does not care about your command structure. The radio cracked again. Dustoff 2's pilot sounded closer now, though the aircraft remained more than 20 miles away. Calder command, we have lost the river channel. Dust wall is crossing our route. Request immediate heading. Every face turned toward Cole. He looked at the silent screens, then at the old man whose warning he had turned into a joke. For one long second, pride and responsibility stood on opposite sides of him. Give him a heading, Cole said. Mercer did not touch the microphone. Not until you stop treating this like a temporary equipment problem. Another burst of static filled the room. Somewhere beyond the windows, the western ridges disappeared behind a rising wall of dust. Captain Emily Brooks moved before Colonel Cole could answer. She crossed to the rear communications station, where an old landline sat beneath a clear protective cover. It was not connected to the satellite network. It did not depend on digital routing. It ran through buried copper to regional command, a forgotten backup from another era. Emily lifted the receiver and dialed the number printed inside the cover. Regional operations, this is Captain Emily Brooks at Fort Calder. I need the duty officer for Major General Robert Hale. The operator began asking for authorization. Emily looked toward Mercer's map. A line of faded writing showed through the paper where the fold had worn thin. She turned it over and found a name written in block letters beneath the red route. Daniel Mercer. Below it sat two words that seemed to change the weight of the room. Pathfinder 1. Tell General Hale that Pathfinder 1 is standing in our operations center, Emily said. The line went silent. Then came the sound of a chair moving quickly across a floor. A new voice answered, older and suddenly alert. Captain, repeat that call sign. Pathfinder 1, sir. Daniel Mercer. Is he safe? The question made Emily glance toward the quiet veteran. Yes, sir, but Dustoff 2 has lost navigation near Widow's Pass. Bravo convoy is stranded at Copper Basin, and Colonel Cole has not transferred operational control. General Hale did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Put me on the command speaker. Emily connected the landline to the analog public address circuit. A low hum passed through the room. Fort Calder operations, this is Major General Robert Hale. Every officer straightened. Colonel Cole stepped toward the central table. General, we are managing a regional satellite disruption. Technical recovery is underway. No, Colonel. You are managing aircraft, vehicles, and people who can no longer see the picture you promised them. Cole's face hardened beneath the red lights. Sir, Mr. Mercer is a civilian guest without current command authority. Hale paused. When he spoke again, each word landed with measured force. The man you are calling a guest wrote the emergency navigation doctrine your installation is supposed to follow when every digital layer fails. He mapped those passes before most of your officers entered service. I learned terrain denial from his field reports. Half the procedures in your continuity manual began as notes in his handwriting. The room went completely still. Emily looked at Mercer. He showed no satisfaction. His attention remained on the pencil line leading through the mountains. Hale continued. In 3 separate operations, Pathfinder 1 brought units home after communications, weather data, and navigation systems became useless. He does not need your screens to. Understand that ground. Your screens needed men like him before they knew what to display. Cole glanced at the black wall, then at the burned corner of the map. The confidence that had filled his voice minutes earlier was gone. What are your orders, sir? Give Daniel Mercer the microphone. Place Captain Brooks beside him. Move every operator he requests to the analog stations. From this moment forward, Mercer holds navigational control until every aircraft and vehicle is accounted for. Cole stood motionless for one beat, then stepped away from the central console. He picked up the radio microphone and offered it to Mercer. The gesture was formal, but the old man did not reach for it immediately. He looked at Emily instead. How long has Dustoff 2 been without a visual reference? Almost 4 minutes. Fuel. Approximately 21 minutes. Mercer unfolded the map and pressed it flat. Then we have enough time, but none to waste. He accepted the microphone. General Hale remained on the line. Pathfinder 1, he said, his voice softer now. Bring them home. Mercer placed the yellow pencil against Widow's Pass. That is what the map is for, he replied. Mercer lowered his head over the map, and the entire operations center seemed to narrow around the tip of his pencil. Captain Brooks, mark the last confirmed position of Dustoff 2. Emily placed a small cross near the southern edge of Widow's Pass. Radio operator, switch to the oldest usable frequency. No digital filtering. I want the raw signal. A young sergeant moved to the analog console and turned a heavy dial until static filled the room. Ground operations, tell Bravo convoy to shut down every non-essential system and keep one engine running at a time. We need to preserve fuel and reduce radio noise. Orders moved outward in short, clean bursts. No one questioned them. Colonel Cole stood one step behind Mercer, silent now, watching the old man rebuild the battlefield with paper, pencil, and voices. Dustoff 2, this is Calder Command, Mercer said. Do you see any structure below you? Tower, road, power line, anything made by hand. The pilot answered through broken static. Stand by. We have what looks like a narrow service road beneath the left side. One utility pole, leaning west. Mercer drew a mark. You are farther south than expected. Turn right 5 degrees and hold your current altitude. Do not climb. Calder Command. Visibility is less than 1 mile. Then stop looking far. Look for the next thing. The room remained still except for the soft rasp of pencil across paper. Mercer turned to Emily. Time the wind gusts. She watched the anemometer on the local tower, one of the few independent instruments still working. Strong gust every 38 seconds. That is the pass breathing. He touched the narrow red line on the map. When the gust falls away, the air inside the cut will flatten for less than 20 seconds. He raised the microphone. Dustoff 2. You will hear the wind drop before you see the opening. When it does, turn east and descend 100 feet. Not before. The pilot acknowledged. Mercer shifted his attention to Bravo convoy. Report the water tank. The ground operator listened, then answered. Tank is now behind them, approximately 1 mile west. Mercer's eyes narrowed. They moved after losing guidance. Cole finally spoke. They were following the route command before the system failed. The route command was already wrong. Mercer drew a second line around the basin. Tell Bravo to continue forward another 1/4 mile until they see 2 cottonwood trees beside a dry culvert. Then stop. The reply came back after several tense seconds. They see the trees. Good. The road appears to end there, but it does not. The old maintenance track bends north behind the culvert. First vehicle turns slowly. Every other driver follows the tire marks exactly. Outside, the western horizon had vanished behind brown dust. Inside, the black screens reflected faces lit by red emergency lamps. The room no longer looked modern. It looked human. Emily counted softly. Gust is weakening now. Mercer raised the microphone. Dustoff 2, prepare to turn. Static hissed. Then the pilot said, wind is dropping. Wait. Mercer watched the second hand. 5 seconds. 10. The map lay perfectly still beneath his palm. Now, turn. East. Descend 100 feet. Keep the dark ridge on your left. For a moment, only static answered. Then the pilot's voice returned, clearer than before. We have the opening. Entering the pass. A breath moved through the room, but Mercer did not look up. Do not celebrate yet, he said. The mountain has one more turn. Mercer kept one hand flat against the map as Dustoff 2 entered the narrow passage. You will reach a split in the rock in less than 30 seconds, he said. The wider opening on the right is the wrong one. Hold left even if it looks too tight. Static answered first. Then the pilot's voice returned. We see both cuts. Right side appears clear. That is why it has trapped people for 60 years. Stay left. Colonel Cole watched the old red line beneath Mercer's fingers. It passed through the smaller opening, curved around a ridge, and ended beside the abandoned water tower east of the mountains. The pilot counted down the turn. 20 seconds. 15. 10. Emily tracked the wind. Next gust building. Mercer lifted the microphone. Dust off 2. Bank left now and follow the darker wall. You will feel a crosswind for 6 seconds. Do not correct too early. The radio filled with a low rush of interference. Everyone in the operations center stood motionless. 6 seconds passed. Then 8. Cole looked toward the speaker. Dust off 2. Respond. Mercer raised one hand, stopping him. On the 10th second, the pilot came through, clearer than before. Calder command. We are through the split. We have the water tower in sight. A quiet breath moved across the room. Mercer drew a final arrow toward Fort Calder. Turn east by southeast. Keep the tower behind your right shoulder. You will clear the dust in 4 miles. He shifted to the ground channel. Bravo convoy. Report your position. The lead driver answered that every vehicle had followed the hidden maintenance track around Copper Basin. The last truck had just passed the culvert. Mercer directed them north to a gravel service road that would carry them back to the installation without crossing the unstable lake bed. One problem at a time disappeared from the room. Radio calls became clearer. Vehicle counts matched. Fuel reports stabilized. Then, beyond the reinforced western windows, a faint sound reached them. It began as a distant pulse beneath the wind. Rotor blades. Emily turned toward the glass first. A dark shape emerged from the brown horizon, low and steady, with the abandoned water tower behind its right side exactly as Mercer had described. Dust-off 2 crossed the perimeter and descended toward the landing zone. No one cheered. The silence carried more weight than applause. Colonel Cole looked down and saw Mercer's map lying beneath the red emergency lights, wrinkled where he had held it too tightly. He picked it up carefully, smoothed the fold with both hands, and placed it in front of the old veteran. Mr. Mercer, he said, his voice stripped of command room certainty, I was wrong. Mercer studied the approaching helicopter. You trusted what had always worked. Cole glanced at the dead screens. I trusted it more than the people trained to survive without it. The main doors opened behind them. Major General Robert Hale entered without ceremony, still wearing the dust of the flight line on his boots. He looked at the black wall of satellite displays, then at the pencil marks covering the map. His eyes settled on the burned corner. Hale came to attention and raised a slow salute. Mercer returned it. After a moment, Colonel Cole did the same. One by one, the officers around the room stood. Outside, Dust-off 2 touched down safely as the first satellite screen flickered back to life. No one looked at it. They were watching the man who had guided everyone home before the machines remembered how.